We don't have time for a theme song. It's Wednesday. It's time for the Mattriarchy. I am, as per usual, your host, Matt Reese. I am coming to you from a basement in the wonderful state of Nebraska, and I am joined by oftentimes guest and contributor, number one Marmaduke fan.
Also in Nebraska.
Also in Nebraska. Well, that's for you to say. Hey, I didn't even realize I'm wearing a Nebraska t-shirt today. Look at that.
It's theming.
It's thematic. Well, sort of. RATFIST, today's book, has absolutely nothing to do with Nebraska. It is quite possibly the least Nebraska book ever. So, today, man, so we don't know if anybody else is going to, well, we one person, more person we know will probably show up in a few minutes. That's likely. That's likely. But as far as our regular cast of folks, I do know that Cartoonicus read RATFIST because we were talking about it over on the Facebook. I do not know if he is going to make it or not. So thanks to Isaac Larkin. Thanks for showing up. You're here, don't I count? Yes. Well, you count as a viewer, Isaac. I haven't. There you go. And Flying Saucer, I've not seen in quite a while. So thank you for tuning in. Well, let's just go ahead and jump into the talking about RATFIST to start, rather than our usual meanderings about the weather and the road conditions and all the other nonsense that I talk about sometimes. Marmaduke, when was the first time you read RATFIST?
I think it was when I was first getting into my Doug TenNapel kick a few years ago, and I just started buying used books where I could find them. I don't recall if I saw this ever when it was a webcomic. I know I was into Axe Cop when that first came out, and Axe Cop was kind of the big inspiration for this because Ethan Nicolle and Doug TenNapel were acquaintances, and Doug got interested. Like, how do I do a webcomic? Do you think I should try making a webcomic? And that was kind of the genesis of RATFIST. And then it was re-released as an Image comic, trade paperback, and I don't think the webcomic is up anymore. I tried poking around the website, and it looks like it just redirects you to where you can buy the printed.
It is not. And okay. To quote Doug, it actually mentions it right here in the back of the book. Where does it say it? Oh, I should have highlighted that because it's such a funny way he said it. Basically, he said, it's that I took it off the internet so people would have to buy it. Yeah.
So I think I suggested this one to the group maybe like last year when we were talking about what Doug books do we want to do next.
And I think so. I believe this was one of your suggestions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So the reason I picked it is I'm actually not sure. It's not my favorite Doug book, but it is definitely. We've talked in the past about how Doug has certain themes to his work. Like sometimes there's a strong Christian theme, sometimes there's a strong comedic theme or a family theme. So this is Doug at his weirdest, I think. And that's the aspect of it that appeals to me the most. And even though it's kind of weird, and I think because of the webcomic format, the structure of the story is a little odd too. It still does have Doug's tendency to stuff his books with a lot of meaning, even when it's a completely absurd satire of superhero man children.
So let's talk a little bit. My first reading it was last weekend. I picked it up probably a year ago, but I just hadn't made the time to do it. So one of the things that these Doug reading the club shows make me do is actually read the comics that I've spent money on. Because I have a comic acquisition problem.
It's all part of the plan, yeah.
It's all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. And I keep telling myself, I'll do review streams on all these books I'm buying. Anyhow, so the first time I read it was over the weekend, and I had wanted to give myself plenty of time to leave it fresh in the brain, but also ruminate just a little, get those thoughts percolating. And the book, it is a superhero satire. That's how a lot of the places on the internet that sell it and talk about it and the whole thing. But I think it's not quite a escape plot that I picked it up. I have not read it either. Well, I announced last week we were doing the show. You could have gone back and done the reading, escape plot. I'm just kidding. I don't think I actually saw you on the stream last week, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I think it's a farce, right? So specifically, like, there's a difference in the way comedies work, right? And there's pastiches where you're doing something and you're playing into the archetypes of it as kind of a of for the love of it in some ways. It may be poking the fun, but it's all about the love. And then you have satires that use the structures and the tropes of a genre or of a property to um, um, play a mindful eye onto the genre itself. Hey, Fizz. And then you have farces, and farces like are just to the wall, the absurdity from within whatever framework you're looking at. And I think that RATFIST, it's not that it doesn't have intelligent things to say about the genre, it's that all of that is subsumed behind the absurdity of it all, right? Like I think a decent example of what I'm trying to get at is, like, I don't know if you I'm sure you have, Marm, seen or read about the French play La Touffe, if I'm remembering the name of it right.
Oh, I've heard the title, but I don't know much about it. So
Okay.
What is La Touffe?
La Touffe is a satire of, I mean, it's not even a satire, it's a farce of French high society about a scandalous priest who uses his position to basically lech on the high society ladies within his parish, right? And so it's not really saying anything profound. It's just using the naked dichotomy between a man of faith and a lecherous bachelor, and just intersecting those together. Yeah. So Tartuffe gets used a lot. I think it's Tartuffe, actually. I think it's a La Touffe, but I think it's Tartuffe. I didn't look ahead of time to refresh my memory on it. So, everybody tell me how dumb I am, and that's fine. Because you're right. But the point is that it's not really saying what should we intelligently say about the position of church and politics. It's more just like, huh, huh. And it was very much not even Beavis and Butthead level of humor. Beavis and Butthead is more complex than people want to give it credit for. It's more like Seth Rogen's answer to the comment. I mean, like, Seth Rogen's comment never have anything of substance to say. It just makes fun of people that he thinks are stupid. So, I mean, it's like that. So, but I think there's so much in this that is just like, it's like when Doug will occasionally like say something like snarky about like adults that play video games, right? And it's half intended sincerely, because let's face it, there are always more important things in video games. The other hand, it's like a loving ribbing, because he also plays video games sometimes, right? And he's made video games, and he's made him part of a good chunk of his career was in making video games. So it's not really an insult to video games, but there is a specific kernel within that is still true.
So tying into that, I think I'll reference the first page, because I think the first page is kind of like it's like a Greek tragic play. Doug is putting all of his thematics in the very first introduction of the character. So okay. RATFIST is in his underwear putting on his pants, and he decides that after 8 years of dating the same woman, it's time to pop the question. He has no respect for the institution of marriage, and he's utterly lacking self-awareness in what a selfish man-child he is, as he puts on his stupid RATFIST costume.
And that was the exact moment I realized this wasn't a normal Doug book, right? Because usually in all of Doug's characters that I've read, and I've not read all of his books, right? But okay, like let's in Power Up, the one we did last month, right? The main character from Power Up is very much battling with this man-child aspect to his character, right? Oh, hey, Matt C, thanks for tuning in. I'm sorry you couldn't make it too. That's a real bummer, man. But anyway, the in Power Up, the character is he's battling with these tendencies toward man-childness, and it's especially difficult for him because he wants to make video games professionally for a career. So he's also got this childish thing that defines part of personality, but it also, as far as his hobbies, but it's also something he wants to do as a career. So there's a seriousness to it. and he's balancing that with his duties as a parent and with the complications over his job and everything else. But at the heart of that, like, he wants to make video games because they're fun, but he also wants to take care of his wife and kid. And he may not understand what that means, but he's got this drive to be a better man from the jump, right? That's within his stuff. And so what we have with RATFIST is none of that awareness, right? There should be a conflict between the different motivations that drive this man, but that's not in there at all. He's like fully convinced of his rightness from the first page. I mean, like 100% entirely. Like, you even look at like the Dr. Ong in Creature Tech and all the complexities that are in his character and the conflicts, and he's convinced of the rightness of his atheist presumptions in the beginning of the book, and people keep questioning him on it. But it's clear that there is a conflict in Ong and his desire to honor these different aspects of his past. Like, he thinks his dad is a fool about some things, but he still respects his dad for who he is, right? And there isn't any of that kind of awareness in, and I can't remember RATFIST's real name. But
I can't
there's
remember
none of
either.
Yeah, I can't remember. Nope.
The date they mentioned it, his name gets mentioned in the Ricky.
Okay. Anyway, but there's none of that in the whole thing. Isaac says, was this a way of the author dealing with his real life problems and to laugh and relieve stress? I don't think so. I don't think this is catharsis purely. I think there's something different than that going on. But I think there's
we will definitely have opportunities to talk about Doug himself in RATFIST.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. So the other thing about this that is really interesting too is that this is, especially as a superhero pastiche, satire, whatever you want to call it, right? Is that it's a late career story. So we're being introduced to RATFIST at the end of his career, right? We are to assume that this man in his mid-30s, who has been carrying on with this woman that he's just now deciding he's going to go ahead and marry, he's been dragging along for 8 years. But he's been a costume vigilante for some length of time, for at least 8 years, if not more, right? This is an end of career hero. And that's the other thing about this that I think is really interesting. In some ways, it's like that's that late career hero thing that we saw in Dark Knight Returns. I don't know if this is any kind of reflection on that or not. But it's also weird because we're never really discussed or introduced to the career of RATFIST. It's just, left as red, and but it is a wild world, man.
I think we can make some inferences. So
okay,
if he's been dating her for 8 years, then looking at it from a meta perspective, it's like this is a commentary on the superhero relationship that goes on and on and on and on and on and on and never has any resolution, because the superhero always has to be trapped in a perpetual status quo. But then the joke being, okay, but that means he's a dirtbag. He's a dirtbag boyfriend. I guess our other hint is he works for, what's his name, the Senator Czar Farrar, who is just like a nasty little man in a tutu who has contempt for the voting people, but also claims to be the champion of the working class. So he's working for the senator, investigating his boss. And RATFIST is resentful and thinks that because my boss is a rich billionaire, that means he must be evil. So I'm going to investigate his corporation, expose it. But he's too stupid to realize that he's a chump and he's just doing Farrar's bidding for his own dirty purposes.
Right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share some art on the other tab here. Let me just get that. Did not have this prepared ahead of time. Sorry, everybody. I tell you what, it was one of those things where I really thought I'd be more put together this week, but this last weekend I got sidetracked on other things. So I'll be honest, I got some real life stuff taken care of, and I'm very happy about that. But that's a different story. So yeah, here we have the opening page of Ricky putting on his RATFIST costume. And okay, one of the things, interesting art decision that I definitely want to ask about here. RATFIST's got the Mickey Mouse hood, right? But they never touch. Like they just suspend, they float suspended in the air. And I have to be completely honest, like that was really distracting for me while I read. That was one of the things where it's just like I don't like dislike the design element of it because your brain does a lot of completion with someone like that, but I still found it really like off-putting where there was just this floating dot.
Well, maybe that's the point. This is a farce, so we need a cartoon convention to kind of like alert us that there's something surreal about this entire reality.
That could very well be. That could very well be. So Ricky goes to investigate his boss. And the problem he's had with this girl. Oh, I should mention this is great too. The problem that he has had with this girl is that she hates rats. And his best friend is his superhero accomplice, the rat.
Milt the rat, yeah.
And Milt the rat. And so they're part of him giving up, he's marrying this girl, is giving up his superhero persona, is leaving the rat behind. And I know Doug has had pet rats in the past, so I don't know if that is a factor or not. But it could be, who knows. So anyhow, they go on one last adventure, and they go to break into his workplace of all the things. And in the basement of, and he's a research scientist working for a guy who's developing cancer research, and he's going to try to find out what nefarious goings on are in the basement, which I don't know why it had to be after hours, but there you have. Isaac Larkin says it's enough space for the lawsuit not to happen. Could be legally distinct mouse character. And he uncovers a dog man, and the dog man he fights off the dog man, a man with the head of a dog.
No relation, by the way.
What?
No relation to me, by the way.
No relation. Merely coincidental. And then escapes with a key in the form of a tiki idol. Which is another thing I've been hoping to have Matt see on, because he, of course, is a aficionado of all things tiki, and it would have been fun to figure out guess why the tiki character is so prominent in here, because it's not like the rest of the theme. There's a character we'll get to, I'm sure, that is very tiki like, but so to move the thing along, he while he's investigating the dog-headed man, there is a rat gets stuck in a trap. Let me get this art here, because this is super important. Moves on here, and he goes to free him. The rat bites him and then gets absorbed into the man's body, and eventually he develops a rat tail, like an actual rat tail. He becomes rat-like. Let me just skip through all this stuff. He gets a horrid fear of cats and develops these rat-like beings. And here's Zarfarar, who's making fun of the whole not making fun of, but getting onto that point. But give me just a second here. Oh no, that's the wrong button. Oh my gosh. Here's the problem. There's so much I have a hard time. I have become so dependent on the metal and Twitless being around that I doing background stuff for me to just riff on things. So for a second. Okay.
See if I can pull it up.
I can get to it. It's gonna take me a while to get there.
Okay.
But the I forgot that he starts developing his rat stuff when he's talking to his fiance.
Yeah, it adds a little comedic twist to the world's most horrible date.
Right. He's trying to actually, let's see. Okay. Here we go. We'll get on this part here, because this is real funny. So he goes to the date with the girl, with his longtime girlfriend. He's going to try to propose, and he proposes to her with the tiki key that he just recently stole, which is hilarious. And then as they're going, he's looking for the ring, and the waiter with the cheese, and he just steals it and starts inhaling all the cheese. And she says, "I thought you were allergic to cheese. Is there something wrong with you?" "Oh, there is something. I could use a little water." And he somehow has the little pet mouse watering thingy. And here's like it. This is more like it. But wait, did you get rid of that rat like I promised? "Oh yeah, I got rid of him." And then here is the rat, and suddenly he can hear the rat. Mr. Ricky, a relationship ought to be built on a foundation of honesty. So, all of a sudden he can hear the rat, and he freaks out about it entirely.
So tying into what you said earlier about, satire versus farce, what's kind of interesting is the first chunk, right away there's something goofy about this character, but it seems like a fairly straightforward superhero tale with Doug TenNapel cartooniness. And then it's kind of like we descend further and further into the bizarre. So him becoming a rat is like a step further into the surreal. Later, he bumps into a bunch of incredibly goofy superheroes while swinging around. And for me, like meeting Miter Spam, the superhero who was bitten by a radioactive can of spam on top that was being sawed on a miter table. That's where things just good. This is beyond parody. This is beyond Monty Python levels of weirdness.
Right. And it actually feeds into the whole business. And so but back to the scene here with the proposal. Of course, it's not going great. It says, "Maybe you're acting weird. We should just go home." And "I'm done acting weird." And then the mouse says that this is a lie. So there's this page, and I can't believe how amazing this is, because the rat is crawling on the woman and she doesn't even notice, right? Because of how weird Rick is being. And then he begins turning into a mouse, and this tail pops out, and that becomes a huge factor. And he just has to try to deal and run away so that she doesn't notice. And there's the menu and the whole business. And then there's just, if I had prepared slides ahead of time, there's a great scene where he's actually fighting with his whole tail. Where was that? Oh, here it is. The tail is trying to choke him, and he actually tears the tail off, right? And the tail is left on the ground, right? And here's the thing that I think is first of all, this is hilarious, right? I'm a freak. Well, now you're a tailless freak. Is that better? I've got to get a human disguise, right? It's so ridiculous, right?
So, okay, couple things happening here. So, he's becoming on the outside what he is on the inside. This is a rat. This is a nasty guy. He's been turned into a monster. He's a rat. The rat tail, of course, we're getting like Earthworm Jim vibes, where the tail now is going to become, part of his costume and part of his weaponry. And as the tail begins to speak to him, the tail serves.
That happens, by the way.
Yeah.
The non-embodied, the removed severed tail is a character throughout the rest of the book, and it speaks.
Yeah. So again, more absurdity, but the tail actually becomes a very important character because it's his subconscious. It says all these silly, embarrassing things that are on his mind. I make fun of other people to make myself feel smarter. I'll dump Gina the moment she stops being young and pretty. I want to sleep with every woman I see. I want to eat a whole pizza. Right. So it speaks the things that he really believes but won't say out loud.
Yeah, and one of the things that so the book becomes a quest for Ricky to try to find out what was going on, why he has the key, why he suddenly looks like a mouse, why he looks like a rat, and all these sort of things. And of course, you have this great dynamic action in the thing where he's using his tail just like Spider-Man's webbing, or just like Bigfoot Bill's tentacles, or whatever, or Earthworm Jim's head. And so you definitely have very TenNapel-y action throughout the course of the book as it moves around. Okay. I wasn't gonna just do the next page, but this is just great. Creepy. My tail has separation anxiety.
Let's
Let's
go,
go,
Papa.
Papa. What the heck, man? It's an absolute trip. But yeah, so he had these. Oh, and this is another page. It's just too great to show, not to show. I don't want to say. I want to get through talking about the plot as quick as we can, because I don't want to just spend all day going page by page or plot point by plot point, because it really is. I think it's really worth reading. It's definitely not Doug's normal stuff, but look at this page. Come on, this is just great. Now,
Doug needs to do. I need to do Spider-Man scenes, whatever it takes. I have to give them web shooting powers so I can do Spider-Man sequences.
And I just absolutely love this page. Now, I'm also going to take us a moment to talk here. This is as great as this layout, as great as these lines are. This is also Catherine Garner doing colors and just making Doug's stuff just next level on here. And there's nothing against Doug's art either. It's wonderful. I love the black and white, his black and white style. It's really, really grand. But at the same time, like, this adds a level of cinematic to this page that is just, and Catherine just has a way of taking Doug's art and specifically in certain settings, just leveling it up. And once again, it's not meant as any way as to say anything against the strength of Doug's lines either. But this is so dynamic because of this page, especially. It's so dynamic because of the color work. So, okay.
Down to the blue skyline in the distance.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. Everything about it. It's just great. Just great. It's great. I love it. Oh, here's an interesting point. Isaac says, so a good angel and bad angel with the rat and the devil is between the tail. Oh,
okay,
that full
yes
page
and
is
no.
not
Yes
your
and no. I thought that at first.
Oh,
but
really?
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, then I have to take that back. That's a guest page by Scotty Young. Okay. Yeah. I did not.
I see that. I see the signature. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
wow.
goodness.
Okay. He aped because Doug has a very sketchy brushwork.
Yeah.
So Scotty brought. It's almost like Scotty kind of did like an homage to Doug's style. That's a really artful blending of styles. Then, yeah.
Wow. Well, Scotty, if you ever watch my show, bravo. That's amazing. I'm really impressed. So here I am heaping praise on the wrong guy. I still feel the same way about that page. I love that page.
Okay, Isaac and Doug is here, by the way. But Isaac asked a really interesting question: Is the worm like an angel versus devil thing, or is it the battle of inner egos and demons? So I kind of thought it was going to be, this is going to be like a shoulder devil thing. I think the worm is. Well, the Christian connection would be, it's like the old man, right? So he's a rat. He's got this nasty, gross rat tail he's carrying around with him. But then there are scenes later where the worm, the worm has this line where it says, "I find the Christ story compelling." And the joke is that RATFIST is an atheist and kind of fedora and bitter about, he believes in science. And yet the subconscious rat tail says it likes the Christ story, right? So it's not clear cut. It's not a demonic creature. Clearly, I think maybe the best reading is it's secretly saying the things he's thinking but won't say out loud.
Right.
I think it actually calls itself his subconscious.
Right. And there's times where the tail is more honest, not just more honest. That's what I mean. Is more exemplary. Like the things that the tail would lean toward with helping folks or with whatever else. The impulse to do a good thing. Compared to the expediency or the quote unquote prudence of not, right? And so like Ricky's saying, no, we're atheists. This is the demanding that upon it, where in that same way there's the other behaviors that are by the juxtaposition. It's all inner ego stuff. Yeah. I think that's fair. Okay. So with Doug in the chat, I think if we are approaching the point where the for people who may not have read it, Ricky goes back to the his workplace and goes through the door where the tiki is in, where the tiki key fits, and inside of the tiki key is somebody who's been waiting for him. And let's skip ahead to that fellow. Oh, we're gonna skip him meeting Earthworm Jim.
Yeah, just in case you weren't convinced this book's weird. Okay.
Yeah, he meets Earthworm Jim, and Earthworm Jim is utterly confused. And
page 68 is Space Tiki.
Yeah, and so there's this. Okay, I do have to address this page after RATFIST meets Earthworm Jim. He says, "You were like my childhood, man. I feel like 5 years old right now. I wanted to be an animator in video games because of you, but then I realized all the skill and hard work and dedication. I decided to be a communications major instead." No, you're scaring me just a little bit. Ask yourself, can I trust a grown man in a rat suit? Get away from me! I must escape from the freakishly, perpetually adolescent rat-suited man in a midlife crisis.
So Earthworm Jim hates him.
Which
well,
I just
Earthworm Jim is
at.
a very sincere, childlike character. So
yes, and I laughed at that so hard that I'm still laughing at it because once again, this is one of those things where the I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to frame my why it was so funny.
Well, it's not even like a dream sequence or anything. This is supposed to be literally happening in RATFIST's world. So you can just run into Earthworm Jim and be aware that Earthworm Jim is a video game character as you're physically talking to Earthworm Jim in this world.
So here's part of the thing, right? Like being a lifetime comic book fan, spending so much of my time thinking about superheroes, thinking about the fiction, the narrative, the myth of it all, and having had the chance to meet a few like comics pros, right? You, as a fan, you have this tendency to like idolize people, right? And because you've really respected the work they've done or how else, and stories can really hit you, right? And so you have this whole thing, but like people are still people, and it's and having had a chance to get to know Doug, it's that and how hard that it is sometimes to keep remembering that when everybody is talking at you or that whole thing, to see that reflected, that desire to retain your humanity, that desire to understand that you are separate from your creations, and how important it is to remember that, and how some people just still can't get over it, right? That the reaction, so many people's reaction to any kind of celebrity is that Chris Farley's interviewing Paul McCartney, right? And never more complex or nuanced or human than that. And for Ricky in this to voice that same kind of Farleyness, to bludgeon a phrase, was made it even funnier in here, especially because the very nature of Ricky's character is to be one who is rejecting the serious understanding of maturity, right? And so it's funny, but it's also like one of those things where, like, is this the mirror? Is this the dark, truthful mirror that I'm looking at? Right.
I kind of want to use, since this scene sort of underscores it. So RATFIST acts like a man-child. One of the running gags is people just like take one look at him and say, "Yeah, that guy's like a man-child in a rat costume." So he's an object of ridicule. But then, kind of like the interesting twist, I think, is what Doug does with the character later in the story. We'll get to that when we get to that, and also kind of the fact that RATFIST can still do exciting and cool superhero stuff. So it's like he's a straw man of a weak-willed, namby-pamby, wussy college socialist fedora type. Years before fedora was even a meme. Is kind of the other interesting thing is we're nailing that before woke, before SJW was a thing. That's kind of like RATFIST character, but he's not just that. And that's part of the fun, I think. There's almost like a loving aspect to him, even as we're ruthlessly making fun of them.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think that fits into the like just how over the top everything is in it. So, anyway, so moving on to get the story put along just a little bit. RATFIST reinvades the boss's his workplace, and he runs into the space tiki, and the space tiki is this tiki idol with a brain in a jar, which once again, what the heck?
It's pagan magic, and it's creepy. What do you call it? Hideous strength alien.
Body horror kinds of stuff. It's absolutely mind blowing on that. And the tiki alien basically says that he's there to he's been brought. He was captured by the boss man, and he was, and his pagan magics have been there to have been used in this cancer research. And RATFIST is horrified because the guy wants to just use it to make money. Like that's the worst thing in the world. So, and the rest of, and they go out, they're being chased and they escape. And the rest of it is in the book. I don't want to shift through all the stuff, but I do want to get past it because there's lots of gag of the week kind of adventuring that goes on in the rest of the story, that kind of have the discussion between the science fiction aspect and what paganism is, and how, and which I think is also really interesting too, because the very idea of paganism is discussed on what it even means very subtextually, being the it seems to me that it's reflecting on the idea that a very Galatians idea that paganism is anytime you're trying to change the universe by your will, as opposed to being, accepting the rules the universe came with.
If I build a wooden idol of the god and appease the wooden idol, the god will do what I want it to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. So
one thing, something I want to highlight while we're here is, I don't know if you have the exact page. You don't need the exact page, but one of the things the space idol does is it makes him say, makes RATFIST crawl around and say, I'm a stinky chicken McPoo-poo, and it laughs and says, haha, you say you stinky chicken McPoo-poo. So this is very Doug TenNapel in that it's like a little kid, silly, poo-poo pee-pee sense of humor, but it's showing that the space tiki is cruel and sadistic. And of course, RATFIST lacks the self-awareness. He's like Eustace. He hasn't read the right stories. He doesn't recognize instantly that this thing is nasty and he can't trust it. So of course he trusts the space tiki, and that goes along with it for a while.
Well, and it's also revealed later on, this is somewhat of a spoiler, it's revealed later on that the space tiki actually invented cancer just so he could set up this event so that he could watch how people respond to cancer.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea that this pagan hyperintelligence has been like watching and meddling in human affairs for countless thousands of years is within there. And so that also is one of the things that is really it play one of the plays, and it's not even a pastiche or a straw man of the position, but it's the idea that Ricky, who's an atheist, has no problem acknowledging this idea of this nearly omnipotent, you know, um, transplanetary being with unknown pagan powers, but the idea that there would be a god just is aghast to him.
Yeah.
And like, it's like that quote of Richard Dawkins from oh that Ben Stein movie. What was it?
Oh, Religulous?
No. That was Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Expelled. Ben Stein did that documentary Expelled about the bias within academia against intelligent design. And in it, Dawkins was interviewed, and Ben Stein says, "Well, where do you think people came from?" And Dawkins floats the idea of panspermia, right? That aliens may have seeded life onto Earth because life, we can't even get our head around it. And it's just like, okay, if you think aliens made us, how is that not intelligent design, right? I mean, the idea that that just pushes the intelligent design argument back,
one level, yeah,
generation or whatever you want to call them that. And so, spoiler part of the thing, through their trancing through time and space and trying to run away from the forces of the dude's boss, of Ricky's boss, who becomes a trans-dimensional foe of theirs, for reasons. They end up finding it, getting 4 years into the future, where Ricky finds out the girl he left behind has cancer.
Are we going to skip over the absolutely hilarious? We might want to skip over it because it's so hilarious. I don't know if it should be spoiled.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, I don't want people to not. I mean, there's so much. You kind of want to go into this, I would think, blind a little bit.
Okay. I would agree. Yeah. I would hope that no one would listen to our podcast, but you need the Virgin RATFIST experience.
Yeah. 100%. Definitely. So definitely.
All right, so we're gonna jump ahead to him returning to his girlfriend.
Right. He gets back to the girlfriend, and she finds out she has cancer. And he ends up discovering, and there's a mechanism behind all of this where basically the space tiki has a way of extracting the essences from a living being and then replacing them, and then you end up destroying cancer cells through it. It's a whole what do you call that device?
Well, okay, so you put the soul in the
device. I just can't remember what it's called right
now. Deus Ex Machina? Like that. It's not Deus Ex Machina, no. Okay, so what he's setting up is the way you cure cancer is you put it's magic. You put the soul in the person, the cancer can't react because it's confused by the new soul. You extract the soul and the cancer dies along with the what do you call it? The alien soul, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is also how people can get animal powers. You take the soul out of an animal. If you touch the animal soul, you gain the animal power. So RATFIST finds out this is what happened to RATFIST at the beginning. And so now he's getting more information about what's going on.
Right. So with that, right. And so with that, he finds out that his girl, because he's been gone for 4 years, roaming through time and space. And he gets back, and the world's in a bad state, and it's a whole post-apocalypse, but there's still people there, and his girl, who he loved, had settled down with somebody, had gotten himself a. Oh, I didn't realize I was sharing that screen as I was scrolling through it. Oops. And gotten married, had a kid, and but also got cancer. And so then he's trying to figure out how that all shakes up. And long story short, he ends up sacrificing himself to save the girl's life.
Repeating the line, and there's a callback line where he says, "I love you more than I love me."
Mm-hmm. And it's true for the first time in the story. and that's one of those things that like was really is really like heartfelt, but that's also the end of the tale. And like I said, it seems weird for other Doug TenNapel books because it's not like a full circle kind of discussion about the whole deal. Ricky had a lot of he like end run because he's missed out on 4 years of consequences for his choices. He just ends up at the very end of it. There's just a ton of stuff that he doesn't like. There's not a lot of resolution in for a lot of the personal errors, flaws in his personality, other than this one level of extreme selfishness. And I wouldn't know how you'd rectify that. I wouldn't necessarily want to read all of that either. But there just were so many flaws that were laid out in Ricky's life and history that it was sort of like, oh, so that they're getting a resolution on all of it. There's just a resolution on arguably the most
central piece of it. Yeah. So like he's basically responsible for screwing up the cure for cancer and throwing the world into a post-apocalyptic dystopia. It's all his fault because he's a giant asshole. But so to me, what the kind of like the meta gag is, and what's clever about this is RATFIST is a giant SJW loser fedora. But even before all those were memes, he is the joke version of the worst sort of liberal, mewling, cringing, effeminate man possible. Yet he makes a Christ-like self-sacrificial decision at the end. So it's like the opposite of a subversion almost. So if a subversion is taking the hero and then breaking it and making him into scum, this is taking the scumbag superhero and making him into the hero again. And even kind of like the most pregnant aspect of it is no one knows what he did. Only he knows what he did. And we don't even like see him. We don't see him have like a Christ conversion. We don't see him in heaven afterwards. It's just, he made that call and she gets to live with her family and he's gone. So it's like the fact of what he did remains, even though he doesn't even receive any recognition for it.
And we should also mention, just for the sake of why that observation about that is so poignant in this story, or practical specifically in this story, is that one of the places the transdimensional hopping that he and Space Tiki go are the gates of heaven. I mean, there's no question that heaven is a literal legitimate place in within the context of the story, because they end up just outside. So that's like, it's like a Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey level of no questioning that these things are real because we've been there. So it's that's part of the thing is. But yeah, as a whole, what is your thought about the piece?
Okay, I would say this is, so I call this stream of consciousness writing. So I'm trying to glean how Doug wrote this by sort of like reading his foreword and his kind of like afterward thoughts. So the way Doug described it is he wanted to get into webcomics. So his plan was to try to draw as many pages as fast as possible to build traffic for it. And I think he had the comment, I knew this had to end because I didn't want to draw RATFIST forever. So I think he probably had like a rough idea of what he wanted to do right from the beginning, and then just started drawing pages and going nuts. There's a credit towards the opening where he thanks someone. He thanks Mark Rogers for helping him iron out the third act. So I think he just made up a bunch of crazy, wild, goofy Doug TenNapel silliness in the first two acts, called in a friend to kind of help. How do I land this plane? And so you mentioned this. There are like plot elements like the whole dystopia that don't get addressed or solved. It seems like the core problem is RATFIST being a selfish fool. And that does get addressed by the end of the book, and that's the end, right? It ends with him dead, so that is a very definitive end. He's not just reset back to his superhero status quo. And Doug is here.
Yeah. How's it going, Doug?
Good.
Got some wild echo from you.
Do I?
Yeah. Well, you don't. I don't want to hear you echo. I was hearing us echo from you.
Let me try something. Huh. So my mic is picking you guys up.
Yes.
Let me try turning you. Let me try putting my headphones on and I'll turn. Let me turn my headphones here. This is gonna be ugly.
Hey, Matt, why don't you put up the panel of Doug TenNapel getting like a wedgie or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
We have Doug on.
Let me, nope, not that one. This one.
Let me do settings. Audio.
I didn't get to mention this when we were talking about it, but Space Tiki calls Doug the sub-creator of the universe, which I think was Tolkien's term for what a writer is. He called writers sub-creators. There we go.
Yes, one of the things we left out of our discussion is that there is a monkey fish that is a thug in the course of the story, and that the Doug himself appears through the transdimensional silliness of the and escapades of RATFIST. Can you hear us, Doug? I don't think he can hear us. Well, my hair, that was something. Now the microphone's not working. Oh, still not hearing you. I don't know. I can't help. I'm hundreds and hundreds of miles away. It's not my setup. I've got the ghetto setup here, so that's a problem. Is Doug's got too nice of equipment. That's the.
Yeah, completely mute.
I have no idea. He's cutting out. That's what he was saying.
Okay.
So maybe he'll try to come back. Hopefully, because it's always nice when Doug comes on and we can ask him specific questions.
Since we've acknowledged that Doug TenNapel shows up in the book now, everything's been spoiled. So something I appreciated was kind of getting the glimpse into Doug's family life. Hello.
Hi. Are you getting your echo?
Yep. But only when we talk. Isaac says we can deal. He says we could just suffer through it. I don't know if the rest of the world
I'll plug my headphones into my computer and that should do it.
Okay. I'm hoping. I mean, it should. That should be fine as long as the headphones do their job.
Check.
Okay. Oh, still heard me.
Hold on. Keep talking.
Okay, I'll keep talking. It shouldn't be difficult for me. I do spend my life talking. That's actually the core function of my career currently. So I like hearing Matt in the echo, Isaac says.
Gives a sense of gravitas.
Oh, you get.
Oh, man. That's the is it? Oh, I think we got it.
Okay. You
can hear us. I think we got
echo cancellation on StreamYard.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Dang.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Moron.
Well, I mean, yeah, actually, that's actually it's oddly fitting because humility is one of the big features or subtext in the book.
That's right.
how important it is to be humble. And I don't mind being humbled.
That's my favorite part right there when I appear. That's the only time I've done myself in my own book. So there.
There you have it. There you have it. Yeah. One of the things we were talking about when you were doing you weren't hearing us was that Marmaduke had talked about how he thought that the fact that RATFIST came to visit your kids while you were fighting with the monkeyfish was endearing.
Yeah, like your kids get to meet RATFIST and the space Tiki, and immediately they start telling him about Jesus Christ. I thought that was just a very sweet glimpse into the family.
Yeah, it was good.
So
that was fun.
This was 2010, right?
Yep.
When we're working on this, and of course, I loved the Mike Nelson introduction, especially how he spends a good 3/4 of a page talking about your mustache.
I didn't even remember that he wrote the intro. How's that? How bad am I?
Well, it's been a while. It's been a while, right? So the printed edition was, see what the copy I have is from 11. So that's still been
cool
a bunch of years. I don't want to do the math. 14. I guess I did do the math.
I brought the stack of, I have all my originals out, so I brought the stack of originals for this book.
Oh wow. That's awesome. That page is particularly great too. It's got the Cat Stevens joke at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I when he's running from cats, and I just started bursting out laughing, and my wife looks at me from across the room and she's like, "What are you on about?"
but Doug, didn't you drop the pages when you were teleported into RATFIST world?
You'd think. Yeah. I had to, I got them out before I left.
There you go. That's great.
Yeah, RATFIST is one of the few books where I really didn't care what people thought and had a lot of fun. Including the art. That's Japanese horsehair brush, like very thick line, very coarse, just really fast and fun.
Yeah. So here, one of the questions that we had was earlier, and I don't know if you heard, but specifically, did you how much of the story did you have figured out before you started? I know with a lot of your stuff, you very meticulously plot things. But with
probably it was probably straight ahead for the first third. And then by the time I started getting into the space tiki and stuff, I had to know where it was going. So I had a pretty clear, rough idea of what, before I started, like, I knew his arc. I didn't know exactly how it would happen. By the first third, I knew how everything would happen.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting.
But I did not tightly write it at all. It was just literally like probably a 3-act plot point, of sentences on a single page.
So that makes sense. I couldn't imagine you starting something without knowing at least where the end was going. Just that would seem, that seemed like, because it doesn't. The other thing is, I didn't feel like it felt like, I didn't feel like any point in the story seemed like you didn't have directionality to it. Even the places where obviously you're doing a gag for that day, right? Where RATFIST is swinging and he meets the ham miter man.
Yeah. Miter spam.
Miter spam. That's the one. Was miter spam. Like that was, it's so ridiculous, and it's obviously meant to be that day's gag. But at the same time, it was like one of those, like, we're leading into the next thing. On that. I was, one of the things I also mentioned earlier, and would like your thoughts on, is I felt like the whole thing seems, because you're playing with such extreme, exaggerations of the tropes of the genre, that it seems very much like a farce. And less like other types of humor. It's really an extreme aspect to that.
It's very self-aware, but it's not quite a farce of the genre. Once you allow yourself to break the fourth wall and address the audience and address your own culture and things like that, and you're making fun of it or winking at it, instead of trying to maintain and hold that very real world. That's why you tend not to break the fourth wall, is you don't want to destroy the world that you're building. You don't want to undermine stuff with too much humor or there's no stakes. But it's not I don't think it's as much a commentary or a farce as it is his hero's arc. I mean, his story is always there through the whole thing,
Yes.
primary. And then secondarily, I did things like break the world, look at the camera, make very poignant pop culture jokes at the genre of comics and stuff like that. And that's just because it's more my sense of humor. It really is more me than most of my other books, I would say, as far as like not trying to perform for people or anything, or not, be too deliberate about stuff, but just kind of let it fly. And my favorite kind of humor is non sequitur humor. So a lot of non sequitur jokes and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of that comes from. It's not that it was deliberate. It was that because I was doing a web comic and I didn't care, I was able to have more fun. So it's kind of more, and the story itself, there's a lot of interior subconscious stuff happening. And so I let it go. It's more like a journal of, for instance, Monkey Trout in that bottom left panel, he's trying to take my underpants off. He takes my pants off and tries to take my underpants off.
Mhm.
And that was a reoccurring dream that I had in my youth with these beings, and they looked like the bad guys in Sock Baby. They wore black suits and black hats.
Oh, wow.
And kind of a mask, kind of a white mask on their face. And they were just trying to drag me out in public, and they were trying to handcuff me to a tree and take my pants off. So if Monkey Trout comes into my house in front of my audience, guess what he's going to do? He's going to try to take my pants off, and try to embarrass me in front of my audience.
See, and that's actually really funny too. On the other side of it too, because one of the things you're just talking about how this, you were just making this not as a method of like intentionally trying to say a whole lot. You got an overall story, but there's a self-expression. There's just like you riffing off, as I think, and I think it's a very accurate the way that Marmaduke discussed it at the very beginning of our stream, that this may be Doug at his wackiest. And at the same time, the idea of being pantsed by your own creations in this is sort of the same level of exposure, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love it.
What's kind of interesting
Real
is
Dragon says your dreams are weirder than mine.
like
the art is raw, the humor is raw, the writing is raw. So it's there's way less between me and the page or me and the story. There's a lot more just kind of coming out, is kind of the spirit of the whole book.
I think Earthworm Jim showing up was kind of a nice foreshadowing to this, because when Earthworm Jim shows up, it does have this very surreal quality. Like, how is this world even working logically? And then by the time you show up, it's not just that you're like, most people when they break the fourth wall, they just sort of like wink at the fourth wall, and I would say you more like demolish the fourth wall, and that makes it more mentally acceptable.
Yeah.
Well, and that actually is one of the really interesting things too, when you think about it. And that's not something that I had thought of in this frame before. But a RATFIST shows up in your living room and talks to your kids, and your kids try to evangelize him, and then he goes to the out gate to the wall outside of heaven. It's like, how can anybody just propagandize children like this?
Yeah. They go straight to heaven. Yeah,
they go straight to heaven.
It's
and
good.
The space tiki, who has been a voice for this pagan atheism, for this science fiction as a clown nose on the idea of paganism, being, oh yeah, I know God's there. I've always known God's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was another question I had and it popped out of my head. Dadgummit. one of the things that what we were talking about earlier was the idea of RATFIST being like this, totally unable to commit, showing up in utter selfishness in the beginning of the book, and being a really unlikable guy. And you talked about in the afterword about not wanting to do RATFIST the rest of your life, so you definitely knew where you wanted to end the story on. But you really made him unlikable in the first chapter of the book. How was that completely like intention? Like it set out to make a guy that people would not want to read, or would want to see change, or was that just sort of something that was a part of the?
It certainly demands a change. I mean, you're relieved when he changes, but it's I knew a lot of jerks like him. I worked in Hollywood. It was like every writer I'd met. No offense to writers, but it was like Hollywood writers, Hollywood agents. It's a type, and all of their he had all of their vocabulary, like all of his all the dialogue in this. I do very honest dialogue. And a lot of people, I know Matt Kratz is going to watch this at some point, but a lot of people kind of nail me for being too on the nose or too preachy. And it's not true. It's like almost everything I write, I've heard come out of a human being's head spontaneously. So, and often it does read too on the nose. You know what I mean? It's almost, it's not written enough if there's a fault, because sometimes I'll just find a person and I kind of document what he says and no one believes it's real, but it really is how people talk, is very either selfish or shallow or stupid or on the nose. Their arguments really are that dumb. They really are, atheists really are that dumb. And then all I did when I show people of faith, with people who go, oh, you're so, overriding them. I go, no, I actually find quotes of real people of faith and I say it and they go, it's so preachy and it's so, unbelievable and they're too unbelievably good. And so I go, no, they're actually real people. So I can't explain why everyone is upset that I'm just documenting this stuff. And it really is. So he's a jerk, but he really is an LA jerk.
Yeah.
Or a New York jerk type.
One of the things that like I always come back, I mentioned this before we're talking too. I have to give you a pass on being too on the nose when you predict the future, right?
Yeah.
And that's because that's one of the other things that we've talked about before, is some people are like, oh, Doug's so current year. And I'm like, he wrote this in 2010.
Yeah.
This was 15 years ago.
The destruction of the medical establishment through Obamacare, that doctors found more money in doing breast implants than heart surgery. I mean, it is all predictive and completely documented, well documented. And I believe even like the robots that beat them up late in the future and stuff, the stormtrooper robots. I just think, and that cancer has a better chance of being cured through paganism than through the current medical research, that they would jump that shark. They're kind of doing a jump of that shark already. You find now that they're putting human ears, grafting them to the back of a mouse, and baby skulls on dogs and stuff. It's all being done. It is absolutely all being researched and done. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm only saying,
well, and it's like I don't know if you
the pagan entity also is the same.
Yeah, right. But I don't, and this is back to on the whole medical thing. Like, this is the craziest thing. I'm on a biologic for my psoriasis, because my psoriasis was so bad it was causing me lots of problems. I went the whole thing. One of the biologics, I can't remember which one it was that I was doing some research on. I can't remember the name of it right now. It escapes my head. But it's a specific part of a cell that they found inside of some dude's cancer. And this particular protein strain is not in itself cancerous.
Yeah.
But they mass produced these in a monoclonal antibody that they pulled out of this dude's cancer cell by resting it inside of a solution made out of desiccated hamsters
Yeah.
ovaries.
Yeah.
Desiccated hamster ovaries. And it's
Yeah,
the most
which I'm saying,
Mengele level nonsense that could
but also
possibly
if
exist.
there's a devil, like I always thought, like maybe embryonic stem cells never worked, but if I was a devil, I would try to get people to chop up embryos with a promise of a cancer cure. So he gave them a certain amount of cure to trick the results so that they would repeat it. So because we live in an atheistic science world, they look at it and go, well, I know the cause, it's all this, but if there's a supernatural entity, then all bets are off. It could be, scumming research. I'm not saying I believe this, guys. Don't think I'm a lunatic. I'm only saying if then, it really is meant to attack kind of the overconfidence of the material world.
And that was one thing we pointed out too. And I just absolutely love the idea that RATFIST has no problem accepting the existence of the space tiki. Yet he doubts, and having traveled through dimensions and learning he's a comic book character, those things are easy for him to grasp. But the idea that there's an eternal God,
and that right now, the number one religious expression in growth is paganism. Number one. So, and it's mostly atheists. So they used to be materialist atheists are turning to spiritism and paganism. So it's not that as big of a jump as you'd think. So for RATFIST, he has no problem. Because he doesn't hate the supernatural, he hates God.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'll accept any pagan he's fine with. Or spiritism or whatever happens, so long as it's not the one true God. That's the point.
I want to talk a bit about Mr. Black, so the cat guy.
Before we get to that, I do want to welcome Cartoonicus. Thanks for making it, man.
I am so sorry. I got caught up trying to post my comic tonight, and I actually went, when I discovered I was late, when I went to grab your link for tomorrow, because I'd gotten that out of whack with my schedule.
Whoops.
Wow.
You're off by 24 hours.
Yeah.
You're just early. That's the ticket. So before sorry to interrupt you, Mar, but I do want to get some quick thoughts, since Cartoonicus has not had a chance to chime in what he thought of the thing. Just give it to us as quick as you can. We've kind of already done our plot review sort of bit and stuff. But what are your thoughts, man?
Okay, so one thing I definitely noticed was, I think our time, reviewing Doug's work has taught us that there are two things you tend to be well known for. One is being very on the nose, politically or otherwise messagely minded, and often in a very metaphorical way, right? The other is using absolute random absurdist comedy. I didn't realize until now, I don't think I've ever seen the two of them in the same book together.
Mm-hmm.
That
like I said,
a surprise.
Yeah. Well, and I do have to say, I said this before, so it's repeating myself for people. I think you have to give Doug a pass for being on the nose when he keeps predicting the future.
It's a documentary.
I was honestly wondering when this was produced, because how on earth did you get the rights to put Earthworm Jim in there?
I didn't. That's what I mean. On RATFIST, I did not. On RATFIST, I did not care, including about the law.
2010 was the answer. It was 2010,
and it got published.
Yeah. Image still publishes, so it's still one of their things. It's so small that it doesn't matter. Is really my unfortunate my message to all comics people, there's comics, most of them are so small they don't matter. I could probably put Mickey Mouse and Gene Simmons and do copyright. Gene Simmons and Kiss is copyright Doug TenNapel, and I'd probably get away with it.
Well, and then part of that has to do too with the fact that like Earthworm Jim, even though he's very much Earthworm Jim, it still would probably count as parody because of the way he's being used in the story. So even if RATFIST had been the #1 book of 2011 when it was collected and in paper, it still probably would have been just fine.
It's also clearly just a walk on, it's talking about his presence in culture. Usually when you sue for damages, and it would never be worth your while to sue someone for how little that book made. So usually if you sue for damages, the damage would be that you'd have to prove to a jury that they only bought RATFIST because they thought they were buying an Earthworm Jim comic. That's kind of how the rules.
You'd be showing that they made more money.
Yeah, I mean, if only it was a huge hit that I had that kind of trouble. So usually, it'd be very hard to do a Marvel character because they act. And then the other thing is you set precedent, legal precedent.
Right.
And that's the bigger danger is they don't want to set legal precedent that I could do an Earthworm Jim in any book without their approval. And so that's often why if I did a Marvel character, it wouldn't be worth their while to come after me monetarily, but they have to set precedent that people can't get away with putting Spider-Man in their book without them coming after him, or it tells everyone that it's basically public and abandoned.
And of course, nowadays with them being, owned by Disney, you don't mess with Disney copyright lawyers either.
Yeah.
They've come off it a lot. They've come off it a lot.
They got a lot of bad press in a couple of years over that.
It was pretty much the peak in 2010 is when it was really bad, probably 2005 to 2010. And then after that, it's much more lax.
Yeah.
Like Marvel used to go around to Comic-Con, and if you were doing fan art of one of their characters, they would do a cease and desist on you. If you were just a nobody doing, $50 fan art for people, if you weren't an official licensed Marvel artist.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat. Isaac Larkin says, "What's Doug's next forecast?" I don't know if you feel like predicting the future today.
Yeah. I don't try to predict the future. It's just I think wisdom in general will help you deal with the future, navigate the future, because there's a lot of things that don't change about the human heart. If you believe that man's heart is fallen, like I do, it's pretty easy to predict the kinds of things that selfish people have always done.
Yeah.
So nothing surprises me because I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of what the human heart is rolling around.
I had one weird moment a few years ago where Ethereal Dragon says, "So you don't use a crystal ball?" No.
No.
Just the mirror.
And I guess all kinds of things, and I'm wrong too. So I'm surprised by the future, but I'm just saying when stuff does go wrong, you read the Old Testament and it's going like, man shall not lay with a man. And then you see Nabisco and there's two men kissing on a Oreo commercials. And then you just go like, oh, wow, that's really old. Someone predicted that like 5,000 years ago.
So when about 25 years ago, a buddy and me were sitting around pitching ideas for a science fiction universe. We thought maybe we'd write some stories in conjunction, or have my story and his story, and kind of do the same thing that Conan and the Cthulhu mythos were doing, where they had intersecting stories. And I can't remember which one of us suggested. One of us suggested a future where they've been able to fix all the STDs, and so people would brag not about their number of conquests, but about their number of cured STDs. Yeah. And now we have PrEP commercials. So
Yeah.
That was a little awkward for me to notice.
Like in technology is very hard to predict. Technology, especially market driven, you don't know exactly what it's going to do, but what you do know is if they make adults robots or VRs, you know what people will do with them.
Right.
You already know that.
Yeah.
Good
So
old Rule 34.
yeah, so that's what I mean by I can't tell you what tech's going to bring. I know what man's going to do with it. There's going to be a whole lot of people. It's not going to be very good for a whole, or it'll be profitable for a whole lot of people, and
be really bad for all the rest of them.
really bad for other people. Yeah, will
really
people
bad for
use
them, too.
technology to exploit the poor? Will people use it just in a get-rich-quick scheme? Will they use it to rip off their brother? Will they use it to, take advantage of the working class? Of course, that's
Come
not,
on, Tank. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
that's
This
not
is-
a profit.
Semi-related. So Cartoonicus said something that I think ties into a question I want to ask you, Doug. So kind of with respect to like the on the nose question and talking about, because I'm a Christian, so I want to talk about my faith in my art. So when you referenced, I think you were referencing our talk about Earthboy Jacobus, where two of your characters talk about Christ, and it's related to the plot. So the debate was, well, is that too on the nose? And I was the one who thought, yeah, I'm fine with that. It makes sense for the characters to talk about their faith. RATFIST, I think, is totally fine because it's all so absurd anyway. Like, you're just not censoring yourself, so who cares? Yeah, throw in the Christian faith. We're throwing everything in the pot. Earthworm Jim had a scene, I think, where Earthworm Jim hears about God. I don't think it's like as explicit as hearing the whole gospel message, but he kind of like learns a little bit about who God is, right? So is this a meta thing for you? Do you like stop and think, okay, how do I get my Christian faith into this? Or is it
never
more...
that. Yeah, it's never that. I think it's one of the only things to talk about. So it's not one of many subjects that gets crammed in. It's the only subject that everyone really deep down inside wonders about.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, for example, in Creature Tech, it's faith is discussed quite a lot, but that's also a main, like, it's in some ways it's a plot device because the shroud is your MacGuffin within the thing, the Shroud of Turin. By the way, go read Creature Tech; it's great.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
Oh, goodness sakes, really?
Yeah, they have a full argument about the Shroud of Turin. Is it real or not? And that's in the news today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that.
It's a great book. Yeah, well, I definitely have to do that one. I didn't realize. Okay, it doesn't matter. Sorry. But like that's actually a plot point within the thing, so it 100% makes sense. And of course, Dr. Ong is such a great character, because he addresses there's the Christianity versus atheism, the faith versus science debate in that one, but there's also this idea of what does home even mean, and it's a great story to address all that stuff. And not in a way that like it doesn't feel like you're reading a treatise either, but it's all it's just
So the faith in my stuff, Marmaduke fan, it just kind of comes, and I don't. The difference is I won't turn it off. Like anything that occurs to me, if it serves a story, I'll put it in. And I actually think more people have discussions about atheism or Christianity or the Bible. I think people have a higher percentage of that than is addressed in most of our literature. So the question isn't why do I put it in? It's why does everyone else take it out?
Yeah.
We've always made that joke about Superman. He's raised by Clark Kent in a farm town, and you'd never see them reference the Bible.
Yep.
And it's like, it's so obvious they would never pray for their food or something. So Earthworm Jim goes to a small town in Turlock, and they pray for their food. It's a farmer. So I'm more honest than Superman ever was about what people really do. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Everyone else who demands the atheocracy be put into everything, they think it's a big deal, and they're making my point because they keep demanding that of all my books, this is the one thing they go, it's preachy. I go, no, it just acknowledges what everyone else normally thinks in a tiny, tiny way. It's tiny, it's subtle.
I think Andrew Klavan has talked about how he's written novels where he'll have a character just quote the Bible because it seems like a fitting quote to him. And then his publisher will have the note, no, I don't want that in there, which is an attack on his artistic integrity. It seems like it fits with the character. No, we don't want that reference to so that's actually something I do appreciate about you, is that you go for it. And I guess the only question is it ever okay, no, there are books where you talk about your faith without maybe like having like a full gospel, but and Earthworm Jim is an example of that, you know.
It's very rare that I put the full overt, you know, in there. And it's not that I'm trying not to do it, you know, I won't edit myself in that way. But it's something I cover only because it's what I'm, you know, write what you know.
Well, and I think with RATFIST particularly, I mean, if you're going to take the, you know, the large picture view of it, this is one of the things that if I had a complaint about RATFIST, it's that you raise so many personality flaws with Rick, but the only thing that is addressed is the selfishness, right? And which, I mean, it's fine, but it left me feeling like it's like, oh, but there's so much more. I mean, there's, you know, his story is over, and like all of his, I mean, it's all different kinds of pride. And when you really boil it down, I mean, most of there's a reason that the pride is the queen of the vices, right?
Well, my stuff is probably too terse. You know, there's not a lot of room in the books, especially if you're doing physical, anything, action or humor and things that takes up space. And I don't do like Watchmen, you know, with a 9-panel grid that's just half of its text, which is what I'd have to do to really robust build out more story. So my stuff does come off like a pretty quick read and pretty scant. You know, it's like it goes, you know, and I kind of glance over things, and that's just a weak. I don't know about a weakness, but it's certainly a trait of my story.
Well, I honestly think it's appropriate also for the you know, the reading populace of your fan base, right? I mean, you're not, and this is not meant as any kind of dig, you know, but you're not a Chesterton. Right, and that's not who you're not writing for.
It's not a novel. It's not a novel.
It's a comic book, and I think it hits it. But what I was saying is that so many of the other side of it too is so many of Rick's personality flaws are rooted, and even between like his ignorant atheism, right? Because I mean he is an ignorant atheist, where he's not an atheist who's like I just find the bar of belief so high that I don't know that I can commit. Now, he just hasn't considered it at all.
Yeah.
Belief in the divine would be inconvenient for the lifestyle he chooses to have. It'd be inconvenient for his political leanings. There's just no way he has room for it in there. So he's just an ignorant atheist. But even that's tied to his pride and his selfishness. So they're all
weirdly accepting of like literally everything else.
Yes.
He
even
just hates
turning
God.
into yeah.
Hi, I'm a tiki from space. Okay.
Yeah. He hates God, and he never comes around to loving God, but he becomes a good atheist.
Yeah, he does one selfless act.
Okay, I was going to ask about that, because there is an interesting line where the subconscious, the rat tail, says, I find the Christ story compelling. So my thought was, oh, okay, you're going to convert the atheist. Now, he never has an on-screen conversion, right? So someone asked, does RATFIST go to heaven? Has he had has he submitted to Christ?
No, he has not. And that's the whole point is, it's really his personality is split in a way into 3 beings, right? Because he's definitely jiving with the rat. The rat is the brains, right? He has a very elevated vocabulary. He uses brilliant words. And then Ricky himself.
I was right to give him a British accent.
Yeah, sure. His Ricky himself is the heart, which the gut and heart, but more the heart, right? And this is a Freudian split. Is there's always the mind, the gut, and the heart. Okay, so the mind is the rat, Ricky is the heart, and the tail is the gut, which means appetite and all that. So that's why he's just unfiltered, honest thoughts that Ricky has. So Ricky honestly thinks the Christ story is compelling and he's rejecting Christ.
Mhm.
That's what that joke is about. And he doesn't want to hear from that subconscious,
So here's the Isaac Larkin asks, well, does the rat go to heaven?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who goes to heaven in that story. I know that Ricky just does something good.
I have no filter, yet I must scream.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking the entire time reading it.
If people walked around without a filter, it would be a terrifying thing.
So here's a question.
And embarrassing. It would be embarrassing.
So here's a question on this, and you could not answer if you want. I mean, because this might be, I don't know, but it's 2010. You've got a ton of acquaintances in the pretty lefty webcomic sphere that you shout out that that participated in some ways in the book or the fan art or in their fan communities, and but at the same time, this is a thing where like you're unvarnished, you're laying stuff out there, you're poking fun at the furries. Earlier in the chat, we had somebody who commented, who said the first time I knew that furries took themselves seriously was the comment section of this comic. Which okay.
It probably the most backlash I got in all of my career was over RATFIST's comment section.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things is like
it's because it was bubbling to a head, though. I didn't change, they changed. It was coming to a head between 2008 and 2010 was the gay marriage thing. Mm-hmm. And with it the furries, so showing any judgment on that was no longer allowed in culture. You're a bigot. I mean, it was just mainstreaming all that. Mm-hmm. And they had power then, so they were running with it.
So my question comes on here is like, did that backlash, did the frankness of RATFIST, how did that affect the off of the internet relationship with these guys who you'd foster relationships with? I mean, were people understanding that this is just Doug being Doug, or was it?
No, I mean, it's true for any time someone comes after me, you lose a few friends and you find out who your friends are. So there were tons of liberals that would still hang with me, no problem. And then there were the ones who I thought were pretty close, people who I've helped their career. And they're like, I distance myself from Doug TenNapel. I just can't do this anymore. And so you find out who is going to bow to culture when you really need them. Those aren't your friends. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You find out, and big loss. Who cares? It's like you never were supposed to be in. But almost every project, or anytime I do something in public, and by now everything is so public that there's no one left in the gray area to go, I think I'll try out Doug TenNapel. It's like now everyone's in their camps.
That's fair.
It's actually nice because there's less drama of people coming around. And I still keep all my old liberal friends are still there that didn't go.
Isaac asks, has anyone come to you saying they found faith through your work?
Yes. I mean, just today, I had a editor from Image said that he came back to the faith. I'd been working with him for a long time. So
that's awesome, dude.
All the time.
Yeah. I was going to say that
in that case, that was because he knew me personally, but also through the work. They do come to faith. But it's not that dramatic, you know. Anyone who comes back to the faith, it's never going to be just because of one story they read.
Right.
It's an accumulation of, I'm a pebble in their shoe. I'm part of their journey. You know, I watered their plant one day.
That is what Paul said, right? One person sows the seed, one person prepares the ground, one person waters it, and somebody else harvests it. That's just how it shakes out. So,
and we only give credit to the person who does the heart. You look at it going like, oh man, you brought a guy to Christ. It's like, and there's probably hundreds of people along and experiences along the way that caused that.
Yeah. Oh, and the one factor in all of that is the Holy Spirit himself. You know,
that's right. That's right.
Who's there to animate all of it?
Yeah, there's only Christ does the work. We're the sticks if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So cool. Well, I think that was almost all of the questions that I had on the thing. Oh, okay. I did have one other question. I just remembered the space tiki. Like, where did you get that idea from? That is such a wild thing. Things to combine. Was there a specific?
Tiki art is big from my childhood because I was born in '66. So by the late '60s, early '70s was a lot of where the tiki art originally came from before it became kitsch of kitsch. It was originally kitsch.
All right,
and you know, that Enchanted Tiki Room from Disney is what I based a lot of him on. And kind of The Brain Under Glass, that's like 50s sci-fi, you know, those pulp novels and stuff. So he's very much a thing from the past. And it's kind of an early form of paganism. But he really is like a true, and to me, primitives are funny, kind of like we would laugh at them, you know, some of their rituals, like when you see guys with bones in their nose doing their dances and stuff. And it's like, whoa, but it's kind of, you know, it's just primitive and funny and interesting in that way. And so space tiki is that, you know, he's a jolly islander, interdimensional, who knows what he is, you know, with a certain amount of, and I kind of believe this about pagan evil is we consider it ignorant evil. It's not brilliant like the devil, like a Lucifer genius. They're kind of dumb. They're kind of just doing their thing. And it never occurs to them to do something else. You know what I mean? It's not a moral thing that they're trying. They just are, is how I kind of see the pagan gods.
Matt had the comment that he thought most forms of paganism are an attempt to manipulate God into doing what you want it to do, whatever the gods are. Yeah. And so then his connection was, well, RATFIST the atheist is kind of oblivious about his universe. He doesn't think about the true God. And then the space tiki is a true spiritual power. It offers him these sort of spiritual powers. So and my thought was, it's sort of like in C.S. Lewis when, you know, the kids meet a witch or they meet a dragon and they haven't read the right stories. So they don't know how to react when they meet an evil creature. RATFIST does not know how to react when he meets a clearly suspicious, monstrous little demonic creature.
Well,
yeah, he's dismissive of it, kind of, at first.
Well, and yeah, definitely at first. But the other side of it too is I wondered whether or not you were playing in the view of paganism as seen through the book of Galatians, where Paul draws a parallel between the Judaizers' form of Judaism, of Christianity, with this very religious rites. Do this to please God. You know, put some put some points on the scorecard by doing all the right things, and then God will be more happy with you. And Paul really compares that to the paganism of the pagan East, of idol worship. It says if you're treating Judaism the same way that the pagans are treating their pagan rites, then what's the difference? You know, if it's Jesus, Jesus is the key or he's not.
Yeah, you can definitely treat the one true God like he's a pagan god, and then he'll straighten you out real quick, because he does not serve men. And he keeps saying, you keep building these idols that are made to look like fish and beings and stuff like that. I don't live in those idols. I just think a pagan, the reason you can't look at it from our point of view, which is that we bring corn and we can manipulate that pagan being, bring a bowl of oranges or whatever, and he gives us a good crop. You need to really look at it from the pagan's point of view, which is that I believe, I'm not saying they're real, but I'm saying they're so dumb that you can bring them a bowl of oranges and they'll do what you want. See what I mean?
Okay.
The reason why the man brought the bowl of oranges to manipulate the spirit is because he finds out when he does that, he gets a good crop. But what's implied, it's not so much that the pagan doesn't exist to serve the man. The pagan God already exists. And then because they're so just dumb and appetite and basic, that it's easy for a man to manipulate them into what he wants. Oh, you want me to kill a child? I'll kill a child. You want me to make a sacrifice? I'll make a sacrifice. You want me to turn around 3 times and draw the chalk circle on the ground and put candles up, and then you'll do what I want? Okay, I'll do that. But they're always doing something stupid and not something brilliant to get a pagan god to do what they want.
Yeah, and that's definitely especially in the chthonic Canaanite cults, the idea of manipulating the god through terror was a thing that a lot of the ancient Canaanites believed, that they could bully the gods into.
Just look at their Unga Bunga dances. They do an Unga Bunga dance and turn around and they'll bring rain. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, if I solve a math equation, I'll get this miracle. It's not that. It's always a weird ritual that brings man lower down with the animals kind of thing. If I put on this outfit and put on this eagle head and, act out this thing, or if I draw this painting on a cave wall and predict the hunt or whatever, he'll give me a hunt. It's like,
throw a virgin in the volcano.
Yeah. Throw a virgin. Yeah. It's always it's never, if I'll solve non-Euclidean geometry, and then it's never.
What's interesting about that though is kind of like the direction I thought you were going is that we make fun of the pagans, but the pagan knows something the fedora Reddit atheist who reads Richard Dawkins doesn't know. They're closer to a reality that the scientific man misses out on.
Yeah, he doesn't know more, but he is more. Okay, because I don't think Space Tiki is very self-aware, right? Nor would any pagan god be that self-aware. I just think they are untapped power, right? They're amazing power, and just in being honest and in being, they have that power. So an atheist, it's kind of fools rush in where angels fear to tread. An angel knows that you don't make a sacrifice to a pagan, but a fool, and that's always the tech guys in all these science fiction movies, they're always too trusting of technology, like Jurassic Park. You never asked if you should do this. You just asked, could you? That's kind of the big warning to them, is that they don't show respect for the universe and what they do. Enough respect for the universe.
Well, that's where I wanted to bring up what Isaac Larkin here said. An idol can be anything that takes the faith away from seeking God. I assumed when I read it that the reason for using a tiki idol here was that they were making an idol out of science.
I never thought of that, but it could be, yeah. There is more probably in Ricky has a key, and that key is kind of a key to everything he wants to be done, and it also shows that the science was willing to compromise to do anything it was to save Mr. Black's daughter, I think, who had.
I remember this. So Mr. Black's daughter died initially because he wasn't willing to compromise and consent to animal hybrid experimentation. Right. Later, he changes his mind and starts working with the tiki. And I think he kind of regrets that because he talks at some point about how this is his redemption. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like Black was doing bad scientific experiments, but because he desires redemption, then he works behind, and maybe it was purely for greedy motivations, but he's the one working behind the scenes in the hellish
and
future.
he's brilliant. He's brilliant. So for him, it's different. For him to work with a pagan, it was deliberate and he knew it. And Ricky did not do it deliberately.
Right.
Ricky did not do something deliberately evil that he knew was wrong and forbidden. Mr. Black did know, and that's why he's a villain.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And then the other thing on the 3, I didn't get to finish the thing on the 3, the Ricky split into 3 parts is that's a classic Freudian thing, right? The ego, superego, or the stomach, heart, and mind. That same formula you'll see throughout most heroes' journey stories is like Star Wars, you know, Princess Leia is the brains, Han Solo is the gut, Luke is the heart. In Star Trek, Captain Kirk is the heart, Spock is the brains, Bones is the stomach or the appetite. So you'll see it in kind of trios. And so I thought that was a good balance of a cast of characters to have that trio in the Rat, Ricky, and the Tail.
Yeah. One of the things that's also interesting about that too is even though they're all different voices, none of them are complete in their actions because they work interconnectedly with everything.
Yeah, they're one unit. Really.
They're one unitary thing, as opposed to simply like being a team that have their own mini story arcs within the thing. You know, Ricky's tail only exists as an extension of Ricky himself. You know, and everything. So, but yeah. I really enjoyed RATFIST. I definitely did.
Cool. If I made you laugh, I did my job. If I gave you a little smile, moved you a little bit at the end, I got you.
Yeah. It's not my favorite, but I really enjoyed it.
It's junky. I mean, it really is coarse, and so you know, it just. But I also think it's better than most web comics. So it's not as junky as what I've read. But I'm just saying it's junky for my work.
Hopefully, not all web comics.
No, of course not.
You realize, Doug, that all 3 of us make web comics, right?
I'm very happy for you. I'm sure they're fascinating. But no, my kids read them all the time, so it's you provide them with happiness. So
well, that's good.
But I got submerged in web comics. You know, I learned that business and tried to. You know, I bought ads and stuff. You know, for promoting and.
Oh yeah.
Tried to work comments, get guest artists, ran the blog that put them up one at a time and all that. So I really tried to learn and submerge myself in the business of web comics and kind of the culture.
Teach us your ways.
Well, you guys know as much as I do about it, but I'm just saying in doing it, you guys know as much or more than me about it. But
the difficulty is it's I'm not going to say it's harder than it was back in the day because it was still hard to getting attention back in when in 2010 2006 when we first started publishing. It was always hard getting eyeballs, but the whole internet's different than it was now as far as what people's browsing habits are. And so it's I don't know.
And I don't think there's a big audience of readers. This is me and my own ignorance, but I don't see an audience of readers in web comics, novels, comic books. I just think we're moving on from being that kind of a consumer. In general, I don't know how many web comics you guys read in a day, but you probably spend more time watching videos in a day.
Oh, I sense that. Yeah.
So if you're not, and so we can't expect an audience to do what we never do, because that's very bizarre. Although there might be a small audience that is potent around your work that you could build on and grow. I just don't. And the other thing that I would do that I've always done in mass media is look at who else is just starting and blowing up. That's the best teaching moment, because you can't, if you say like, oh, the market's dead, and then suddenly some guy shows up and he's getting 100,000 reads a day, you go, well, what's he doing? Because he just showed up and kicked my butt. You know, I do
Yeah,
have my
2 years ago, that was Laura Olympus was that situation where a gal came out with a comic, and it just like it was the most incredible growth I've seen in anything in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was something about she just caught the thing at the right time. She had a format that fit Webtoon where people were starting to go a lot. But you've got a real what's that called, the priority distribution,
Yeah.
where like every new medium form seems like when it first becomes popular, there's tons of people that'll read all of it or participate in all of it, and then after it stabilizes, those just fill down into you have the top like 80% of the traffic or productivity is being done by 20% of the people.
Yeah.
And
you want to be just in the upper half, of the whole world if you're going to do something. And so what I would do if I was going to do a webcomic now, and this is something I would recommend to you guys, I mean, I would try something, aim for the stars for 3 months doing a page a day. And if it didn't take off, I'd quit it and go do another thing, another comic, try another 3 months, a page a day. Because if you can't get that thing to catch, it's probably not ever going to catch. There's not a magic moment that's going to come along if it hasn't happened yet. So it could be that you have a brilliant story and characters, but built underneath an idea that people don't want to buy into. So you take your great writing and drawing and put it in just a whole other idea that they might all really warm up to. That's that's what I do. I've done it with every comic. I do it with every game. I do it with every idea. I do it with every YouTube channel. Is you just kind of go, hey, my views are kind of going down. They're not going up. And I really need them to go up, because if I can't make a living at this, I'm not going to be doing it for long. So I'm going to go try something else, change format every 3 months until that blue line goes up.
Well, yes, I think you figured it out, though.
Well, it's because you can't tell what is a hit, but you know that you have to get up to bat. So but I do know that repeating the same thing, unless there's a guy like who did a webcomic for 10 years and then suddenly it took off. There might be, if that's a common thing to happen, then that's still viable. But if in general people are popping in and they're just taking off, say within 3 to 6 months, and you haven't taken off in 3 to 6 months, then you're probably not going to get what that genre. I would imagine. Now, I don't know how good the algorithm is on the Webtoon sharing that side of it, but hopefully it's automatically cross-pollinating other comics into people's feeds. And so what you'll see is undeserved views on certain days when that algorithm is suddenly giving you stuff and trying to build and spread your audience, build your audience. That's what an algorithm should do.
Yep, sure. Definitely. And I've seen some. I've not had a lot of luck with Webtoon, but some of our titles are definitely getting that cross views on the Global Comics platform. We've got some stuff up there too, and they run it differently, but I've definitely had more views there than over on Webtoon. So, but that is a whole different subject. I do have one question, because Marmaduke fan said his laptop died on him, unfortunately.
Wow.
But I do have one question from the chat I want to ask you before we call it a show. And that Flying Sauce says, does Doug have any plans of doing more short subject films?
No, but I have a plan to do a long form subject film. How's
really?
that? For some reason, it's just hit me. I don't care. I don't know why, but I've been getting a hunger to do a longer form story on video or whatever. And I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to do it either, but I'm just going, it's weird to me that keeps hitting me. So definitely not. The only reason why I do a short film would be to somehow fund the larger film.
To practice up for it. Yeah. Like John Soares did with his
Danger Element.
Battle Genie. Yeah. The battle element, which was an interesting picture especially as far as the fight cinematography goes. Really
Yeah,
enjoyed
he's
it. Fight scenes.
amazing.
They're amazing. Yep. So anyway, we're gonna call it there, guys. Thanks for tuning in, Doug. Thank you for showing up today. I appreciate
It's
it.
so kind of you to have me. It's so fun to get to talk about my work. Just, especially obscure stuff like RATFIST and stuff. It's cool to hear other people read it out loud. I don't get to hear that very often, so it's cool. I appreciate it. You do great work.
So anyway, number one Marm that Marm from the chat says, I was gonna say look into comic dubbing. It seems to pop off a lot. No one reads comics, but they'll listen to a video of it. I think that people have been talking to me about that for a decade, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that because, like I said, that algorithm, YouTube's algorithm is probably better than the web comic algorithm is. So if you just put your web comic on YouTube and read the pages every day, it might be a better format and it might be more profitable. So you're getting your web comic read, you're using a superior. By the way, the biggest algorithm in the world is TikTok, is the one that they say is the easiest way to build a giant audience is TikTok, and it's about to be illegal here in America. But the second biggest is going to be YouTube.
That's such a weird, there's a whole conversation wrapped up in that last sentence that we don't have time for.
Yep. Go, everybody. Get out of here.
We'll talk to you all later. Next week, I think we're talking about the Addams Family, I think, if I remember right. So that'll be it. And thanks again, Doug and Cartoonicus and Marmaduke fan. And we will catch you all next time around.
Blessings, y'all.
Bye.
Stay tuned.
I was going to ask Doug another question.